like to call to order the Board of Commissioner regular meeting for May the 15th. Would like to welcome those in attendance. And at this time, I'm going to ask that everyone please bow your head. I'm going to lead us in invocation. And afterwards, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would, bow your heads, please. Father, we do thank you for this beautiful day that you've given us. This time of year is so beautiful, just like your other seasons. But we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunities we've had so far, and we just pray that what we've done has been pleasing in your sight. As we work on the county's business tonight, we just ask that we would be civil and that we would do things that are pleasing in your sight. Guide and direct us all, and let us be about your will. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. Now, if you'd join me in the pledge, please. Thank you all for participating. At this time, I would seek approval of our agenda with one item being stricken, and that's item number 1, presentation and retirement award to David Harrington. He is not here tonight, and we would like to move everything up by 1 on this agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Okay, we have a first and a second of approval as it has been presented, amended. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The number 1 item now would be an update on tax collector foreclosure, and that is our tax administrator, Clinton Swearingen. Clinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, other members of the board. I'm glad to be here with you tonight. I was asked to come tonight to give an update on our tax foreclosure program, which I'm happy to do. We actually started this program back in 2014 is when the contract was awarded. That contract was awarded to Morton and Griffin Attorneys at Law. That was actually at the December 1st, 2014 meeting. Work didn't officially begin until March of 2015, so we're just eclipsed 2 years of work on this program. To date, we have collected $376,136.37 in delinquent taxes. That represents 29 parcels that we have actually initiated the foreclosure program on. The best news out of all of that to me is the fact that we haven't actually had to foreclose on anything yet. We haven't executed the judgment and actually sold the property. Out of the 29 parcels, 21 of them have been paid in full. 3 of those are on a payment program to get it paid. 3 of them we had to stop for various reasons, and 2 we are about to apply those judgments to those at this time. But to date, we actually have not sold any property through the foreclosure program. I want to give you a little bit of background on how it works. The majority of the information I have tonight is going to come from the property tax lien foreclosure book from the School of Government. I know that Josh Morton, the attorney who works on all of these for us, uses this in great detail. It's by a gentleman named William Campbell. He retired after 36 years with the School of Government. It's a very well-written book and lays everything out. But there's 2 types of foreclosures. There's the mortgage-style foreclosure, which is identified in 105-374, and there's the in-rem foreclosure, which is identified in 105-375. In-rem is what the county uses because that's the fastest and the cheapest way for us to foreclose on the property to collect the taxes. I don't know of any other county in the state that's using the mortgage-style foreclosure. Everybody uses the in-rem. But there's a lot of steps to the foreclosure. The benefit of the doubt is always given to the homeowner or the taxpayer to keep their property. The first step before we can foreclose, we have to advertise that debt in the paper. Some of you may remember I was here in February to give you the outstanding balance on the 16 taxes, and at the same time I asked you to allow me to publish those names in the paper. I can't foreclose on anybody until those names have been have been mentioned in the paper. After that, we have to send a letter to the taxpayer or the owner, and then we have to do a title search. When we do in REM, we have to notify not only the owner, but we also have to notify anybody who may have a judgment or a lien against that property. So 9 times out of 10, that's a bank, and we've already tried to reach them and get them to pay so they don't lose their interest in the property, and usually they do. Usually what you find on these are where individuals have loaned somebody money and put a lien against the property. Doing the in-rem style, we also have to notify those individuals. So if I'm going to foreclose on person A's house, but I have a $10,000 lien against that property, not only does the tax office have to let the taxpayer know, they also have to let me know, so that I don't, if I want to pay the taxes to protect my lien against the property, then I can, because once the foreclosure happens, all the liens are extinguished against the property. So we have to do a title search, which on most of these is pretty consuming, because a lot of the ones that we foreclosed on are heir properties. So that takes a lot of time. But Josh does a good job of handling all that. Once we do the title search, then we have to notify all those people by certified mail. So if I have taxpayer A owns the property and there's 10 people who have liens against the property, then we have to notify all of those individuals by certified mail. The big question is, what happens when they don't accept the certified mail, which happens often? Then we have to advertise it in a local newspaper once a week for 2 weeks after that. Once all of that is done, then we have to wait 30 days from either when they accept the letter or we have published what's required in the paper. After that 30 days is elapsed, then we can docket the judgment against the property for the taxes owed. After the judgment has been docketed, we have to wait another 3 months to give them time to pay. Once the 3 months is over, then we have from the 4th month until 2 years out to actually execute that judgment. We actually, out of the 29 properties, we did file 2 judgments on the property. And in the 4th month, those judgments were paid. So it's a long process, and even after, say we sell the property, say we execute the judgment and we take it to sale and it's sold at the courthouse in the lobby or on the courthouse steps, there's a 10-day upset period bid, so that anybody can come in and upset. And once you bid, the 10 days starts over again. At any time during any of that, the owner of the property can come in and pay the taxes, and it's all null and void. Now, there is a docketed judgment which accrues interest at 8%. There's administrative costs and court costs that the taxpayer would have to pay on top of their taxes. But as you can see, the way I'm explaining it, every benefit is given to the taxpayer to pay their taxes to keep their property. And that's not what we want to do. We don't want to take anybody's property. We want to just collect the taxes that's due to the county, municipalities, and fire districts and distribute that. But sometimes they need that nudge. Now, one thing that I talked to my staff in the collector's office and I started thinking about, once we started foreclosing on these properties and people realized that we were serious about doing this, in July of this year, I started sending out what we call enforcement letters, saying, hey, I know you owe back taxes. The county has started foreclosing on properties. I want you to be aware that you could potentially be foreclosed on. So since July of 16 through April, we've collected another $60,298.31 through enforcement letters, where we didn't have to pay Josh or anybody anything to let them know, this is serious. We're planning to do this. And it's worked great. I focused on, the beginning was vacant land that owed at least 10 years. Some of them were high dollar amounts. And the last 3 that we have done are actually on houses that owe 10 years of back taxes. So we're starting to move into the houses as well. I think it's working great. Josh always keeps me informed, lets me know what's going on. And I think it's been a win-win for everybody. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. I'm by no means an attorney. I think I probably know enough to be dangerous on it, but I'll be happy to try to answer any that I can.
Any questions of Clinton?
Mr. Chairman, Clinton, thank you for coming. Thank you for that information. Do you have an idea of possibly how many partials or a dollar amount that would be maybe 5 years in arrears on paying? I mean, I know you probably don't have that information handy, but.
Well, I don't have it handy. I mean, I can definitely get it. There's several parcels that owe 5 years in back taxes. The thing that I also want to stress is I'm not going to foreclose on something where it's going to cost the county $1,000 to $1,500 to pay Mr. Morton to do it, and there's only $900 of back taxes owing. So that's going to, limit some of the smaller parcels. That's not huge dollar amounts. I just don't think it's, a great idea to be spending money to get money. But definitely, I can also give you the number to date on that $367,136. We've paid Morton and Griffin $10,858, which is 2.8% of that total, which is a good number, I feel like.
I have a comment, Clinton, that I want you and all the other commissioners and those in attendance to hear. I had a gentleman come by my office last week, and he was talking about taxes, past due taxes. And he was somewhat upset because of all the people that were listed in the paper that wasn't paying their taxes. And he says, "What are y'all gonna do about it?" And I told him that we had this program in place. And he says, "Well, I'm a taxpayer, and a lot of taxpayers that pay their taxes feel the same way. But," he says, "do whatever you can to collect those taxes, because I pay mine, they should pay theirs."
Right.
So I assured him that we were doing everything within our legal realm to make sure everybody paid their taxes. So thank you and your staff for what you do.
No, thank you.
No other questions? Thank you, Clint.
Thank you.
Item number 2 is a cooperative extension agency. The presenter was Lori Ivy, but Lori is sick tonight and cannot be with us, so I'm going to ask our county manager, Andy Lucas, to be the presenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll do my best to fill in. Before you this evening, you have the approval of enhanced voluntary ag district applications. There are actually 4 of those. There were 5, but one of those gentlemen, Mr. Robert Edward Hill, has asked to have his name removed from consideration. I think he is going to request a voluntary ag, not an enhanced voluntary ag, but it has to go through the committee first as a voluntary ag before it can be considered. So that'll be, you'll see that at an upcoming meeting. So you'll be asked to take action this evening on John and Kathy Davis, Vicky S. Udi, Ron and Nancy Bryant, and Earl Almonds farms for enhanced voluntary ag district. Just so you all are aware, and the public, the difference between the enhanced voluntary ag district and a voluntary ag district is enhanced voluntary ag districts are for a 10-year commitment. And so it essentially becomes a conservation easement in a lot of respects for at least 10 years. It has to stay in that. So if the land is sold, then it has to continue to be used for agriculture. With a voluntary ag district, you can actually, with 30 days notice, you can actually pull your property out, and then you could sell it, and it could be developed for a different purpose if the zoning was correct, or you could get it rezoned or conditional use permit. So that's the difference between the two. You have all the applications before you. I'll be more than happy to read each of these, and we can go one by one, or the board can make a motion to approve them together. I'd be more than happy to do whatever the board's pleasure.
What would the board like to do?
Mr. Chairman,
Sir.
make a motion to approve all of the enhanced voluntary ag district applications as well as the voluntary ag district applications.
Second.
We have a first and a second to approve the enhanced and also the regular districts. I believe that's correct. Is that what I heard? Okay. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor of this approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, County Manager Lucas. Becky?
Good evening. It looks like I've got the most items to present tonight, but the nice thing is I'm not asking for any money, okay? And the first two items that I want to cover with you are two programs that are here in the county, and I'm just really proud of these two programs because not only are they run partially or fully by volunteers, but they are saving the taxpayer monies and that money, and for that, I know we're all very thankful for that program. The first program I'm going to talk about is the Senior Health Insurance Information Program, or it's called SHIP. It's a division of the North Carolina Department of Insurance, and it offers free, unbiased Medicare counseling in all 100 counties of North Carolina. We acquired the program from North Carolina Cooperative Extension in the capable hands of Lori Ivy back in 2015, and Keith Nash and I are the coordinators for the program here in the county. The counselors give guidance to Medicare beneficiaries and their caregivers about Medicare, Medicare supplements, Medicare Advantage plans, Medicare Part D, long-term care insurance. They help people who are turning 65 and just sort of need to know what they need to do, what kind of supplement they might need to look for. They assist them in understanding their Medicare benefit statement and recognize Medicare billing errors. They do not tell anybody what they need to get or what kind of insurance company they need to go with. They offer unbiased help. It's not an easy thing to become a certified counselor. SHIP counselors have to pass a 13-hour online training course, attend 2 hours of training a quarter, and provide 40 hours of counseling or training or outreach every year. The Stanley County SHIP program sees appointments year-round, but especially during open enrollment for Medicare Part D, which is October the 15th through December the 7th. Appointments are seen practically every day. This is what's so impressive about the program. But last year, our SHIP counselors in Stanley County counseled 753 clients and saved those clients at least $392,000, and that's impressive. Most of those savings were recognized during the Part D open enrollment. They found a cheaper Part D plan that a senior could enroll in. They encouraged them to switch, and therefore they are saving them money this year. So I think that's real impressive, and to know that there's a lot of, this program is run partly by volunteers is impressive. So anyway, I did ask for the certified counselors and the people that just volunteer for the program to be here tonight so that you could recognize them. Basically, everybody in our department is either a counselor or a volunteer. It just comes with the nature of the job. But if they will, when I call out their name, I'd like for them to stand up, please. Okay. The certified counselors that we have right now on the program are Walt Deppy, Karen Ingram, Rachel Morrison, Jahala Williams, Martha Sue Hall, Keith Nash, Mary Troutman, and I'm also a counselor. And the other people who assist in the program during the busy times are Isabel Howard, Linda Clark, Joan Honeycutt, Sharon Green, Alicia Holland, and Pamela Sullivan. So anyway, there's no but they do a great job, and so we're very thankful for the volunteers and the counselors that we have for that program. Okay, the next program I wanted to mention to you tonight, I want to recognize Walt Deppy. He is the coordinator for the AARP Foundation Tax Aid Program, and so he's going to come forward and tell you about that.
Good evening. The program offers free tax preparation and help for anyone 50 years or older and those that can't afford a tax preparation service. The Stanley County Tax Aid Program sees appointments at the Stanley County Senior Center and is a volunteer-run program. We also do 2 days in Wadesboro and 2 days in Troy. In Stanley County, there are 18 people who volunteered in the program this year. 10 of these are certified preparers who have taken the 24 hours of training online, classwork, and tests, and are certified by the IRS. 8 of these are client facilitators who take the required 2 hours of online training. They answer phone calls, make appointments, and make sure each person has necessary paperwork before the return is completed. From February 1st through April 18th this year, Stanley County program recorded and returned 435 phone calls and prepared 420 tax returns. Of the total returns prepared, 352 were in Albemarle, 38 in Wadesboro, and 30 in Troy. At an average of $100 a return at the tax preparation site, this program saved its clients over $42,000. I would like to recognize the volunteers at this time. Those in attendance are Dr. Sir Mack, Vivian Bear, Linda Clark, Karen Peak, Judy Deppie, and Isabel Howard. The volunteers that are not present are Ed Jenkins, Barbara Williams, Chris Cripps, Pat Moat, Joanne Ullman, Sue Mandrano, and Linda Whitney. Client facilitators not present are Linda Sullivan, Nancy Barker, Paul Roberts, and Vince Lombardo. I would also like to thank one other person, Joan Honeycutt, who, whenever they can't get an appointment or have questions that we're not answering, they call her and give her a hard time. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to thank Becky and all of you folks for everything that you do for Stanley County. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr.
Chairman.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and mention this. I turned the golden age of 65 this year and was helped greatly by going to the senior center and trying to understand what coverages I needed. And I thank you for that. I thank the service thank Keith for helping me. I know Keith was the one that helped me. And let me tell you, when you get to be 65, you're going to get bombarded with all kinds of literature. And these folks can help you decide what's good and what's bad. So thank y'all for what you do.
I was out at the senior center one day when they were doing the tax returns and for a veterans thing, and Becky and the staff does a terrific job. And I'm like Joseph, I'd just like to commend you guys for what you do for the seniors and for everyone in Stanley County. That's a huge number, so thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing nothing, Becky, you're up again. Thank you.
Okay. I am here tonight to get your approval for the FY 17-18 Aging Funding Plan for Stanley County. This funding plan is the Home and Community Care Block Grant budget it's the money we receive for funding the 6 aging programs in our department. And the 6 programs are in-home services level 1, level 2, congregate nutrition, home delivered meals, transportation, and information and options counseling. This year, as in previous years, we don't know what our actual allocations are, and we probably won't know that until September or October. But we do take the advice of Central Carolina Area Agency on Aging, and they tell us to budget at the same level for next year as we are at this year. So the budget's prepared with the same amount of block grant funding that we have received for this current year. As required, though, the block grant committee met discussed, distributed, and voted on the funding for each of the aging programs for the next fiscal year. And I think the aging funding plan was sent us an attachment, so I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions, Ms. Weemhoff? Becky, I do have one.
Okay.
Terminology. What's trans 250 mean? I have no idea.
Okay, it probably means transportation, and 250 is a service code.
And in-home one?
In-home services level 1, which is home management, and level 2 is personal care under in-home services. I'm surprised you can read this. This is mighty tiny print.
My bifocals help me do a lot of
Okay.
things. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve the funding as presented.
Okay, we have a first, Vice Chairman Burleson, a second by Commissioner McIntyre. Any other questions? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Weemhoff, you're still up.
I sure am. Okay. All right, the fourth item. The Senior Services Department is completing its second year of a 2-year contract for the caterer of our nutrition program, which includes catering for the congregate meals and the home-delivered meals. Bid packets were sent out and were opened on April 13th. Although we sent out 6 bid packets, only 2 were received. One was from Punchy's Diner, who has been our caterer for the nutrition program for the past 4 years, and the other bid was from Tiffany's on First Domain. Both bid prices were the same, which is $4.45, and this is the price that we have been paying for the past 4 years. In order to evaluate both caterers fairly, in arriving at a recommendation, both kitchens were visited, and we also consulted with Environmental Health for their professional input. We also compiled a comparison chart, and I believe it was attached with the agenda item to help us in with the decision. Due to the volume of meals that Punchy's Diner prepares on a daily basis, the makeup of their kitchen and all the equipment that they have and the experience that they have from catering our nutrition program for the past 4 years, as well as Cabarrus County for the past 6 years, we feel that Punchy's Diner would be the best caterer for our nutrition program. We just feel that our seniors it'd be the best choice for our seniors, and it's not, and gambling with the meals of our seniors is not something that we want to do. So therefore, we are recommending for your approval tonight that Punchy's Diner of Concord be approved as a caterer for the nutrition program for a 2-year contract from July the 1st, 2017 to June 30th, 2019 at a bid price of $4.45.
Thank you, Ms. Weemhoff. Any questions for Ms. Weemhoff?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I guess this is for Ms. Winghoff. Being from Stanley County, I always think we should support businesses in Stanley County, whether they're just getting started or what. And obviously, with Punchy's being in Cabarrus County, I do have issues with we should be supporting our own citizens here who have businesses based here in the county. Do they have the ability to meet these the demands?
The Stanley County caterer?
Yeah, Tiffany's.
Today, they do not. We have been told that they would go out and buy the equipment. We get approximately 210 meals a day, 5 days a week, which is over 1,000 meals from the caterer each day. They would be catering to 4 different nutrition sites. This is a lot different catering for our nutrition program than just doing a catering job. They are actually catering not only to 4 different sites, but every meal. And these are the standards we have to go by, and we're monitored in that as far as temperature, volume that we serve, the quality of the food. there's anywhere from 6 to 8 items per day. And in addition to that, there are 6 to 8 disposable supplies that go along with the meal. So not only is the food divided out to go to 4 different sites, all these items have to be packed separately to go out to each of the 4 nutrition sites. I would like to tell you that this is an easy job. It's not something that I would want. Whoever has this job has to get up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning and start cooking the food. And the food absolutely has to go out their doors by 8:30 because our standards require that the food has to be at the nutrition sites between 9 and 9:30. And from there, they're packed and then sent out to the home delivered meal clients and served at the nutrition site. When we're monitored by our area agency on aging, they look at temperatures, they look at the amount of time the food is on the road, they look at the amount of time that it takes for volunteers to deliver the meals, and if they're not within standard, we're cited for that. I would love to think that we have a lot of caterers that would love to do our program. Truthfully, we don't. It's not a job that a lot of caterers want, which is why out of 6 bids that we sent out, and 3 of those were in Stanley County, we only got back 2. One from Punchy's and one from Tiffany's on Main. We even made phone calls to make sure that the local caterers were not interested in us, and they weren't. It's a huge commitment. I've even known counties that whenever bids were open, they didn't have any bids to open up, and so they had to go outside their county and look for a caterer, and they're a larger county than we are. There's just a large volume of food that has to be prepared. Standards have to be met based on the volume that Punchy's is doing now and based on the size of their kitchen and the facilities that they have. That's why we're making our recommendations. Ultimately, moving to a new caterer, there's going to be growing pains, but ultimately it's going to be our seniors who end up suffering. And truthfully, our department tries to make the very best decisions we can with the seniors in mind, the very best in services, programs, and support, and whatever. And that's how this decision was arrived at. We only want the very best for our seniors.
I completely understand that. I want the best for our seniors as well, and that's why I also want what's best for all of Stanley County, including our businesses. If they were, now you said they're not ready at this time, would they be able to meet those demands by the time the contract would be implemented?
Equipment would have to be bought, and I think there's staff that would have to be trained. And we've got, I've been told they would be, but I don't know. It is.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. William-Hoff, the
Yes.
comparison, you got Punchy's 13,200 meals per month.
Yes.
Guess that's what they prepare now.
It is.
And you got 3,750 at Tiffany's.
I do.
And did I hear you correct when you said it's 210 meals per day?
It is.
And the Meals on Wheels is what we require. Is that correct?
That includes the Meals on Wheels.
So 210 meals.
It does. It includes congregate meals and home delivered meals. And home delivered meals make up about 65% of those 210 meals.
Do you have any idea of the 13,200 meals, how many of those are Cabarrus County meals versus?
Yes. I think that's about 30,000, I believe. And Stanley County, and I don't have a calculator with me, I think Stanley County is about 45 to 50,000. We actually have a home delivered meal program. In Cabarrus County, they have a nonprofit Meals on Wheels program, so they don't cater that. But the meals that the 13,200 meals under Punchy's, that includes the meals at their restaurant, and they also cater to a business, but I guess due to their contract, they wouldn't tell me how many meals that is, but it's sizable. And they also cater to a church. I forgot, a church, once or twice a week.
Did Tiffany share with you of the 3,750 meals? Did she share with you who might be getting the most of those? Did she share any details?
I don't believe she did, no. I know that she was open on Wednesdays and is now closed, understand. I know she caters to, does some military meals, maybe 25 a day. And I know that she has special events. She's catered for us at the senior center for an event that we had. I think probably the majority of that is off-site catering, but I don't know for sure. Just this is based on our conversations with her.
And I'm curious.
But she did give us these numbers.
Yeah, I'm curious, the, was it $4.45 per meal, is that accurate?
Yes.
They come in at the same dollar amount, that's mind-blowing. Public records, okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I think with the research that was done to come to this conclusion, it was very applicable, and you're to be commended for doing that job. Just with some quick figures, 210 meals a day for 20 days out of a month, that's 4,000 some meals. So, they would be more than doubling that. So I don't think they could handle it, and I don't think they get ready by July 1. So I'll make a motion that we approve Punch's Diner for our meals for the senior services.
Thank you.
I have a motion that we approve Punch's Diner for a 2-year contract. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that motion, sir.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any other comments before we call for the vote?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would just like to say it's tough being up here because we certainly want to do business in Stanley
understand.
County. And, we want Stanley County to succeed, and it's tough when you see something like this to where you're going to have to send business outside of the county. But, with the information that we've heard and stuff, I have no choice but to support the motion that's on the floor right now.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, all in favor of approving Punch's Diner for the 2-year contract, please say aye. Aye. Those that vote against this, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Subject line of Workforce Development Board appointments, County Manager Amy Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You've actually recently appointed both of these folks to unexpired terms when the incumbents in those positions left those positions. And so before you this evening, you have a recommendation from the Workforce Development Board to appoint Mr. Danny Poplin to the Education position on the Workforce Development Board, Mr. Michael Smith from the Stanley County EDC to the Economic Development position, both for 2-year terms starting July 1 of 2017, running through June 30th, 2019. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of County Manager Lucas?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to approve the request for the 2.
Thank you, Commissioner McIntyre.
Second.
Second by Vice Chairman Burleson. Any comments, questions before we vote? Hearing none, all in favor of those appointments, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's see, County Manager Lucas, you're still up.
Thank you,
Appointment
Mr.
of Deputy Clerk.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Ms. Beverly Swanner Helms is currently employed as our administrative legal assistant in the county's legal department. We're respectfully requesting the board consider appointing Ms. Helms as deputy clerk to the board so that if the need arises, if Tyler is out or unavailable for a reason, it may be a sick child, it could be vacation, if a special meeting was called for any or emergency meeting. And this would allow Ms. Helms to execute necessary documents, minutes, contracts, loan documents on behalf of the county. And we actually had, when Carolyn Balcom was in that same position, she was deputy clerk. I mean, And I think we may have utilized that one time as a result of a special meeting or an emergency meeting that was called when Tyler had a conflict. It's not something that I envision that's going to be used on a very frequent basis because Tyler's extremely reliable. but it's just something that is really a backup plan and a contingency. So we'd ask for your consideration.
Any questions of the county manager?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move that we appoint Beverly Swanner Helms as deputy president.
Okay, have a motion by Vice Chairman Burleson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Swain. Any discussion? All in favor of this appointment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. County Manager Lucas. Popular tonight.
On a run here tonight.
Pfeiffer University.
Pfeiffer's requested as a result of their project on our former museum site, and there's a map included, a couple maps included in your packet. You can see a 26 by 32 foot triangular parcel in yellow that's highlighted. They're asking us they asked us initially to donate the land to them. And that requires public hearing and some economic analysis in order to do that. And so we talked to them and said, could we simply propose to the board of granting you a permanent easement for that 26 by 32 foot track in lieu of that property disposition? And they were fine with that. And so this is not going to have any impact on our property. It's just a hill with some scrub bushes on it, and so it's not necessarily going to hinder us or create undue harm for us. It'll actually make the plot of land more attractive. And they're also requesting a 12-foot temporary easement across the county's property, and you can see that with the dotted blue line. And the temporary easement they'll use that when they're shoring up the new retaining wall that will be built at the back of their site, at the front of our site where the Marks house is. So we're asking the board to review and consider approval and authorize staff to develop, negotiate, and execute a permanent 26 by 32 foot easement and a 12-foot temporary easement for the construction of the retaining wall. And both easements will be for the county's property located at 112 North 3rd Street. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of County Manager Lucas?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Commissioner
I
Eaton.
make a motion we approve and authorize staff to develop, negotiate, and execute the permanent and the temporary easements at 112 North 3rd Street.
Second.
Okay, have a first and a second by Commissioner Louder. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor of this, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, County Manager Lucas, you're going to talk about the recommended biweekly health and dental insurance premiums for employees and dependent coverage and retirees for next year.
Yes, and this is for employee-dependent coverage and retiree-dependent coverage. And this is for beginning July 1, 2017 through June 30th. You have both the health and the dental. We're recommending increases to those based on the actuary information from Blue Cross Blue Shield and trying to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to try to recover the cost. And then the manager's recommended budget will continue to recommend that employee premiums are paid at 100%. But this will be for those folks who choose to cover dependents under our plan, which is very robust, and a lot of folks take advantage of it. That these rates increase so that we are recouping the costs that our plan is incurring through claims. And so that's in here for your consideration this evening. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of County Manager Lucas? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we approve the recommendation for the increase in the benefits for dependents.
Thank you, Commissioner McIntyre. Do we have a second to his motion?
Second.
Commissioner Swain seconded. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. County Manager Lucas, recommended budget presentation for 2017-18 fiscal year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to actually go down to the podium so I can run the PowerPoint presentation for you. Just pardon me for one moment. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and I appreciate the opportunity to stand before you this evening and present the fiscal year 17-18 recommended operating budget for the county. And this will not only include the general fund, but our utility and airport enterprise funds, as well as a special fund, the 911 service fund. There's been a lot of time and effort from department heads that's gone into this. They've done a great job of being good stewards of your taxpayer dollars over the course of my tenure here, and they certainly did that again this year. I believe you'll see that the requested budget is certainly more than recommended budget, and that's just simply on our ability to pay with keeping the tax rate affordable for our citizens. But I certainly don't begrudge the department heads for advocating and trying to make sure that I'm aware, and certainly you all are aware through the document, that they have additional needs that we're at this point in time aren't able to, at least in my opinion, aren't ready to afford. But it's a matter of priorities, and simply this starts the conversation for us to have a public hearing on June 5th for folks to come and voice any support or concerns against the recommended budget. And then you all will start a series of budget workshops that we'll set dates for at your June 5th meeting. And hopefully we can adopt a budget by, that we've tentatively set a date of June 22nd. So I'm going to go through and begin the presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions at the conclusion. I wanted to just sort of provide an overview of what you'll find in your budget book this evening. There's a transmittal letter. Transmittal letter's several pages, and it really provides a lot of the details of what you'll find in the line items throughout the budget. A lot of information about the revenue, information about education, capital items, and so it really provides a lot of detail, human capital, and so that's a place where you can go and you can read the details of it. Then there's going to be a recommended budget in brief. That's just sort of a one-page, high-level summary of what the recommended budget includes. You saw a little bit of that in the preview I provided to you in the board bulletin this past Friday. After that, you'll see some total dollar and county dollar spreadsheets, and you can kind of see a comparison of the recommended budget to the adopted budget, as well as a comparison of the recommended budget and the county dollars that are associated with that. When you look at the dollars that are in the budget for fees and services like building inspections, register of deeds, EMS, and you take those dollars out, and then you realize what the county dollars, the property tax and sales tax that's in the budget for those specific departments. And so when a department says, well, can I keep the money that I'm raising, and that's all well and good if they're actually putting money into and they're not costing the county anything. But you find a lot of these departments, with the exception of inspections, which a lot of their revenue then also has to go to offset central permitting, which does a lion's share of their customer service work. There's not a department that actually puts money, that actually makes money for the county. And I would say, even though it shows inspections does, they really don't when you consider the cost of central permitting, which really is the face of inspections. And then you'll also find what would you pay for, which is basically a property tax receipt that's included in here that shows the local property tax owner specifically what their property tax, not the sales tax, not anything else, but what their property tax, based on the average homeowner and the average home value, what they're paying and how those dollars are allocated for each specific service the county funds. There's also a department head requested and manager's recommended enhancement worksheet that you'll see, and that's actually flipped in your book. We had to make it a little larger this year so it would make it easier for you all to read. And so that was our one of the enhancements we made as a feedback that we got from you all last year as we went through the process. And then there's line item revenue and expense details by department. There's 70 or 80 pages of those, and then there's a recommended fee schedule that you'll see in the book. And so the bottom line is no recommended tax rate increase. This would be the 11th consecutive year, if the board were to adopt that, the same tax rate as we currently have, that we would have that tax rate. And that's an awful long time to have a tax rate the same. And that's really why I'm recommending that it stay the same, even during a revaluation. Significant investment in public safety and education, and we'll speak more to that. Continued support for economic development initiatives, and increased funding for technology and other capital items in a significant way in this budget, and I'll go over that in just a few minutes. Just a quick look at what was requested versus what was recommended. About a little over $65 million in requests. Recommending 63.2. It's about a 3.9% increase in the budget from the fiscal year 17-18 adopted. If you were to fund all that was requested, you would require another 1.8 million or another 4 cents on your tax rate. And so it would require a 71-cent tax rate versus 67, give or take. So if you look at a multi-year budget illustration, you can see, obviously, we have been trending upward. The economy's improved. And so we've been able to reinvest and do some things that were deferred. If you look back as 12, 13, that's where we're sort of hit a low mark in the budget. There were lots of things that were cut. Some of those things we've put back in. Some of those things are recommended to go back in again this year. Some positions that were reduced as a result of the downturn. And so you could see it in inspections, central permitting, fire marshal, register of deeds. And so some of those positions we made some recommendations and you all approved them last year to bolster those services again so we can provide that customer service that folks expect. And I'm also recommending some additional improvements this year to continue to keep up with that workload. So $63.2 million, about a $2.4 million increase, 3.9%. That's an error at 39.6. That's actually about 42 million in county dollars, and you'll see that on your spreadsheets. 4.72 billion in assessed value. That's a $332 million increase, 5.2%. I'm recommending a fund balance appropriation of 1.28 million, and 1.17 million of that, 91% of it, is tied to one-time capital outlay. And that 1.28 million is less than last year, but I don't believe what we've been recommending over the last, or adopting over the last few years, is sustainable long-term. I think it's important that we begin to reduce our reliance on balancing the budget with fund balance. But if we are going to use some fund balance, I think it needs to be somewhat correlated and aligned to one-time items that you can pull out and wouldn't have to do the following year. If you look at education, I'm recommending a $319,000 increase, about 3%. I'm recommending that we get an Article 44 tax now, sales tax, that was added last year, July 1. We are trending higher than what we had anticipated we would get from that, and so I'm recommending an increase to that. We appropriated $465,000 to the school system last year. I'm recommending we increase that to $500,000. I'm recommending the other $110,000 go to offset the debt that will be associated with the Riverstone property, which is about roughly $110,000. And we believe that revenue will hit right around 610, and so it's 110 for economic development, 500,000 for education for the public school system. And so the amount that you're going from 465 to 500,000, it's roughly $35,000 more. I'm recommending that teacher supplements, that we increase that by $150,000 to $236,000. The $86,000 that we appropriated this year provides for an extra $100. And so I feel like we need to do more. I still don't think this is enough. I still think we need to do more. But it was as much as I felt comfortable in not appropriating any additional fund balance. And I think it is important that we invest in these teachers that are the backbone of our system. And regionally, we don't compete well when it comes to those supplements. And so I think it is important, specifically knowing that a lot of them could drive to Cabarrus County or Union County or some of the other Rowan County, and that it wouldn't be that long a drive for some teachers depending on where they live. And so I think it is important that we continue to try to pay attention to that. Our teacher turnover is pretty good when you look at us as compared to other districts, but I just feel like it's important that we do pay attention to it. And I'm recommending an additional $195,000 in capital outlay, and this is tied to an increase in sales tax. This is Article 42 and Article 40 specifically. With respect to the community college, 3% increase as well. This is exactly what they asked for, and so the 45.7 is consistent with their request. And again, just like last year, we're reallocating part of those dollars to cover the debt service associated with the new cosmetology building. And then just like last year, recommending $160,000 for capital outlay for them, for their facilities, to keep up with the maintenance and any other needs they may have, sidewalks, things of that nature. When you look at public school enrollment, I think this is sort of the, and what I'm recommending is sort of the elephant in the room. You can see that the blue represents what was the planning allotment that was set aside at the beginning of the year of what DPI thought was going to be enrolled. The gray represents what's actually was enrolled each year. And so you can see that actual varies quite a bit from what the initial planning allotment was that DPI thought was going to be enrolled in the school system. And so you can see consistently actual doesn't come to anywhere close to what the planning allotment was. And so you can see where the planning figures for 17-18, it's less than where their planning allotment was in 16-17, but it's quite a bit higher than what's actually there today. And that doesn't include, that their DPI's forecast doesn't include the impact of the new Greystone Middle School or the private elementary school that's getting ready to open in the Norwood area. And so I think that's important. The Greystone Middle School will take over 300 kids. And so I would dare say a fair number of those, probably 50%, will come from the Stanley County school system. And so that number is not even reflected in this planning allotment. And so I think it's important to understand that. I think it's important for us to understand the landscape of public education's changed. There's a lot more choices. There's private school, there's charter school, there's homeschool, and folks are taking advantage of those choices. And I think it's important strategically to look at that and make sure that our model respects that and reflects that, because people really truly have more choices to educate their children, whether that be public, private, charter, or homeschool. And I think we have to recognize that. Where the money goes, you can see this page broken out by the major program categories that we have. 84% of our dollars are tied up in mandated services, things we have to fund. You may not have to fund it at a certain level, but if you don't, then you jeopardize being out of compliance and other things. But 84% of your dollars. So when folks say, well, I think you need to cut this and I think you need to cut that, we have to be very careful not to cut those things we have to fund, which are the mandated service, such as the jail, debt, DSS, EMS, sheriff, education. So that's about 15, 20, and 76% of your funding is tied up in three major categories: health and human services, education, and public safety. That's what's driving your budget. Over 1/3 of the local dollars are allocated to education. Human capital. I'm recommending a 3% COLA for our employees. I think it's important that we recognize that the market is moving, that employers are hiring, they're looking for talent, they're willing to pay for talent, and I think it's important that we to commit to a COLA. Not only does it reward our current employees, but it also moves the starting salary, the midpoint, and the maximum for all of our pay ranges. So it helps us recruit employees as well. So now that starting salary will move 3%, and all the employees inside that range will also move 3% with that COLA. I'm also recommending that we keep our merit program in place. That's critically important. When folks talk about we did this training or I did this certification, that's the whole point of merit. If you go and invest in training and education, then you should be a better employee. Your evaluation should reflect that, and that's where the merit program comes in, because that's where your opportunity is to get that higher performance evaluation. If the training and the certifications are truly worth it, then we should be getting a tangible result of that, there should be a higher performance evaluation, and thus you should get you should have more merit. So I'm recommending that we continue to fund that merit program at the same level we funded it this year at $220,000, which allowed us to give average increases of around 3.5%. So last year the board gave 2.5% COLA, then we had this merit in place, which allowed us to do an average of 3.5%. So our employees did fairly well, and I think it's important to continue to commit to that so that we do make sure that our not only our starting salaries, all that moves, but also those folks who commit to good performance, paper performance, also are rewarded throughout the course of the year. I'm recommending 12 additional full-time positions and 3 part-time. 11 of those 12 positions are tied to the full implementation of the 2472 EMS plan that you all committed to last year. We did phase 1. And they said, well, we'll phase it in over 3 years. But what I'm recommending is we actually delay the implementation this year till March 10th, and that we go ahead and do the full amount. And that way we're not having to balance 2/3 of a schedule against 1/3 of a schedule, and then you had the morale issues and other things. We'll just go ahead and bite the bullet and do it all. And actually the impact this year will actually be less by delaying that. Next year's it will increase some, but it'll be offset. And so I'm recommending the full thing. The other full-time position is for the sheriff's office, for a narcotics drug position, to enhance that level of service that we're providing so that we can do more undercover work. And so that's where the 12th position comes from. The 3 part-time staff are elections and in central permitting and in the register of deeds due to the increased volume in those areas. Continue the wellness clinic, which has been very well received by our employees and helps keep our healthcare costs down. And I'm also continuing our health insurance gain sharing, which we won't have this year because our costs have exceeded what we're bringing in. But I think it's important that carrot still be there for employees to shop around and try to do things to keep our costs down. And if they do, and we generate savings, we share a percentage of that with them. And if you look at if you look at where we stand against sort of communities that are similar size, we don't have as we're right in the middle, or maybe even a little less than the average when it comes to employees per capita. We're a fairly lean organization, and I think it's important for the citizens to understand that. There's a lot of organizations that are similar size to us that have a lot more employees per capita, and there are some that don't. And this is a little difficult because you never know specifically what services some of these counties fund. Some may not have an airport, some do. Some have utilities, some don't. And so it's somewhat difficult to compare apples to apples, but it gives you some idea. With respect to group health, you looked at dependent care tonight. I am concerned that our expenses are outpacing revenues. Obviously, I think a lot of this has to do with Affordable Care Act and what we're seeing in terms of expenses and other things within the system. But we do need to make some adjustments to the expense and revenue side. You took action tonight to help with the revenue side, but I think we need to make some minor adjustments to deductibles and out-of-pocket limits. We haven't adjusted those since I've been here. So I'm recommending some minor adjustments to our deductibles and out-of-pocket limits, primary care, copay, specialist, tier 2 and tier 3 prescriptions. Again, these are minor. They're not significant. They're certainly, our insurance consultant would still say to us, you guys offer the most robust and best plan we see in the state. There's no one we see that offers, and even with these changes, you're not changing our opinion of that at all. But I'm not recommending any change to urgent care copays, ER, or our generic prescription copays. Major budgetary changes. You can see here the increase for the COLA. Health insurance premiums have gone up, and this is the county's share for the employee and what that's costing us. The annualized merit from last year, we do that in mid-year, so we have to annualize that cost into the next year. The school's capital outlay, the additional staff for EMS, the additional funding for the schools with the additional increase for Article 44, increase for teacher supplements, the Riverstone debt, increases in technology for DSS, an increase in the technology for jail master control, And then you can see some one-time things coming out. The schools, we gave the schools $400,000 last year in one-time money to replace a significant amount of technology. Obviously, it's been replaced. That one-time expenditure doesn't exist, so that was backed out. We had a one-time renovation of the Agri-Civic Center. Again, that's backed out, and a reduction in school debt. You can see capital outlay, what was requested, those items that were $1,000 to $9,999. There's roughly $135,000 requested, recommending $123,000. The full list is in that transmittal letter that you have in your packet. On the larger side, with the capital outlay of those things 10,000 and greater, 1.16 was requested, recommending about 1.05. Again, I feel like this budget had a lot of technology in it. It's got some vehicles in it, and I included those in the cost, even though I'm recommending we finance those, and so some of those costs won't actually show up until the 18-19 budget, but then we'll have other vehicle debt rolling off, and so it's sort of a wash in terms of the net impact to the budget, because right now you've got payments, and then those are over a certain number of years, they roll off, new ones go on. We try to keep that fairly consistent and level, so we're not seeing spikes in our expenditures. Revenue, about 0.6 percentage points difference in terms of what fund balance appropriated, a decline. Sales tax is up, which is great to see. Obviously, the economy has improved. We all can attest to that. I think we see it every day. And so we're budgeting more there, an increase of about 5 percentage points on the ad valorem side. But overall, revenues are fairly consistent as a percentage with where we've been in prior fiscal years. We did lose $100,500 due to the Carolinas healthcare system property tax exemptions. It was about $15 million in value, if I recall, Clinton, and speak up if I'm wrong. But that works out just our impact. It obviously is impacting the city of Albemarle as well. And if I'm not mistaken, theirs is about $70,000. And this is just the exemption that they've chosen to take on additional parcels of property and buildings than what Stanley Regional or Stanley Memorial may have done when they own the facility. And we've worked with our legal counsel and the school government, and we believe that they're fully in the right to get these exemptions. You could take legal action to try to fight it, but this is one of the number one priorities for the county association, is this issue of exemptions for some of these healthcare entities that lobby significantly the General Assembly to keep these exemptions. And some of these properties are generating revenue for them. They're truly just renting them out, and so I think it's an issue we just have to continue to stay attuned to and continue to lobby our own legislative delegation to possibly make some tweaks here, because obviously $100,000 could go a long way to addressing some issues or reducing the tax rate in Stanley County. Outside agency request, we did get a $10,000 request from the Arts Council. Did not recommend that request. $25,000 from CVB. That is mandated by the local law that set that up, and so we have to flow that $25,000 through. The West Stanley Senior Center, I put it greater than $25,000 because they actually recommended that we become part of the senior center, but never really put a number to that. But I can tell you that it is far greater than $25,000 if we have a full-time staff person out there and paying the utilities and rent of a facility and doing programming every day. And so, but I'm recommending the same appropriation as last year, the $25,000. Fee changes, inspections. There was a general statute that changed the permit threshold. So if you have to do $15,000 worth of anticipated work in additional square footage before permits required, not $5,000. So we needed to adjust that in our fee schedule. Recommending that solid waste fee go up $3. Now it'll be $75 annually, and that's just really related to our cost. We did put out to bid our hauling contract this year, and our hauler came back cheaper than the other one that responded, that could actually meet our specifications, the number of times we need it, their ability to react when we need special kinds of dumpsters, and how quickly they can do that. And so really in this market right now, there's really with Waste Management and Republic are really the two that can meet the specifications, and Republic provided their bid was lower based on the information that our former facilities and solid waste manager gave me. I'm also recommending an increase of $1 to the copies of the vital records in the Register of Deeds. Volunteer fire districts. Ridgecrest Volunteer Fire District has asked for an increase of 2 cents on their property tax. From 9 to 11, they're seeking to implement a multi-year equipment replacement plan and a long-term enhanced operational coverage. You'll see in the transmittal letter a specific breakdown by year of what they're trying to do each year, and it goes out into 2025, I believe. And so they put together a pretty detailed plan of how they're going to use this additional revenue. Millingport has also asked for an increase. They want to move from 5 to 10 cents. Again, they've proposing a 5-year capital equipment replacement plan, and they desire to also increase operational coverage during the day. You know, the county provides some additional coverage for to pay individuals during the day, because it's difficult to get folks to cover that 8 to 5, 9 to 5 time period. And so they're seeking to increase their tax rate to provide an enhanced level of coverage. Our enterprise funds, 4% increase was requested. I'm recommending a 3% increase. We're anticipating a 4% increase from the city of Albemarle and the town of Norwood. I'm also recommended this year a $75,000 hookup grant that will be implemented, and that's taking $30,000 from the general fund and $45,000 from the enterprise reserves, their retained earnings, to develop a hookup grant that we used to get a $75,000 hookup grant on a fairly regular basis from the Department of Commerce. They did away with those grants when they, and now those are no longer available to counties. And so I'm recommending that we put this back in place. And the real reason for that is we've put a lot of water and a lot of water lines in the ground in Mission area, Cottonville area, and some of those folks still haven't hooked on. And it's really truly just a matter of they don't have the financial capacity to do it. And so these are low to moderate income programs that we won't administer. We'll contract with a grant administrator, just like we used to administer the program. They review applications, and then we let those contracts to local private sector plumbers. They hook them up, and then we start accruing revenue from those folks in excess of just the minimum payment if they're paying the minimum payment. And so this helps to move some water through our system, which is good, and it also gets more people buying, which increases revenue, which we really need to see on the water and sewer authority side of our system. And so I'm proposing that to help kind of kickstart that process. Water, that 3% rate increase would move the rate to $22.36, the base rate, $11.46 every 1,000 gallons after. Sewer, it would move it to $7.95 base rate. We are recommending that the base rate for the wholesale from Locust and Oakboro and Stanfield stay the same as last year at $4.75, and so we're not recommending an increase in that base rate for those entities. Greater Baden's budget would increase by roughly $41,000, 8.9%. Piney Point's 17.6%. Stanley Utilities budget by 2.6%. And then the wastewater treatment plant actually goes down because we had some one-time items to make some improvements out there. We pulled those back out. It goes down about 14.8%. We really tried to reconfigure some of the, you see, Greater Baden went up, Piney Point went up. We're trying to reconfigure that and really try to distribute the cost to make sure not only that, but the Water and Sewer Authority's administrative fee is balanced in this year's budget. So that's why you see some of the increases in Greater Baden and Piney Point, and not as big an increase in Stanley Utilities. And we're trying to help all those funds out and including the Water and Sewer Authority to make them all more financially viable. The airport, $27,000 increase, 3.2%. And then the general fund increase is roughly $67,000, 26%. A lot of that has to do with their fuel numbers that they had in last year's budget aren't coming anywhere close to what they thought they were going to do. And so that affected the revenue side more than the expense side. And so we really wanted to try to make those more realistic, because we're going to end up filling the hole at the end of the year anyways if they don't make those numbers. And so that's really a lot of it. And then increases, there was a mower, and there's some hangar maintenance that needs to be done out there. Those were both $13,000 items. And the hangar maintenance is really about an issue of liability. We just need to do some work out there to make sure we don't get hung up in held liable for some of these planes that there may be some issues with moisture. So we're trying to address that. The 911 fund, that budget decreases by 1.9, and we're not recommending any fund balance from that fund be included in that budget to help offset expenses. So in brief, recommending that the tax rate stay the same for the 11th consecutive year at 67 cents. $35,000 additional funding tied to sales tax for public schools, $134,000 in reoccurring operational increase for public schools, $195,000 additional capital outlay for public schools, $150,000 additional funding for teacher supplements in the public schools, and a $45,000 increase for reoccurring debt, service, and operational expenditures for Stanley Community College. Additional funding for public safety, personnel and vehicle replacement, and increased sheriff's office vehicle and equipment replacement, tasers, and some other items in the sheriff's office, some printers, some things for the school resource officers so they can be more efficient and don't have to leave the school grounds in order to do some work and have to come back to the office. They can actually stay there. That'll satisfy some of the school requirements, but it'll also make them more efficient. So there's some things for the sheriff's office in the budget for that additional position. There's also some additional part-time funding for the jail to help them with some staffing resources, and increasing funding for jail technology. Not only am I recommending the master control system be replaced, but there's also some additional items. There's a $11,000 and a $15,000 item I'm recommending to help them be more efficient with monitoring inmates, interfacing with their outside web portal, so they're not duplicating data and they're not being redundant, and so they can work more efficiently. And so there was quite a bit of funding for those initiatives. Facilities maintenance, making sure we're continuing to make improvements to our property so things don't degrade, and also that we look good. I think it's important that our facilities look good and we're setting an example. And so I think that we want to make sure we have funding in there for that, investing in our employees, and continued support for economic development initiatives. Education continues to be a high priority. A third of all local property tax revenue is going to education. Your funding decisions cannot be made in an isolated manner. All our programs and services are important. They all impact quality of life, everything we do. And so when you make a decision on one area, it's going to impact another area of your budget. We also have many needs beyond education. Public safety, child welfare, social services, public health, economic development. The list goes on and on. Those things are important because we need those pieces to be strong in order to have the quality of life that folks are going to want to move here to this community. Our fund balance is very reasonable, but it's consistent with other size counties. So I think, appropriating additional fund balance, I would caution you because it is reasonable. There are also some things that you've talked about doing and wanting to do, so I think it's important that we keep an eye on that because I know we've talked about broadband. We've had some conversations about some improvements at the airport that we'd like to make, and those are going to be significant investments or potentially significant investments. So I would just make sure that we don't start pushing that into the operational budget, and then it's there. That cost is there again next year, but that fund balance may not be because of other things you're planning to use those dollars for. And I'm also making significant emphasis on deploying technology to improve operational efficiency and enhance customer service. One of those areas is central permitting, where I'm recommending that we implement the technology to do for commercial contractors to be able to submit their plans online. We can review them online, we can make notes, we can comment with them. They don't have to print out 4 copies, bring them to us, we got to do them, and then we got to send them back, and then they got to print 4 copies again if we have to redline them. Everything can be done electronically. I think it'll be a good customer service enhancement. You'll see that information in there in the central permitting budget and inspections budget in terms of some line items for technology that have gone up, but they haven't gone up significantly, and I think it's a wise investment to try to move us forward into the 21st century. Budget process and calendar. The budget public hearing is will be set for June 5th at 7 o'clock. Budget workshops, we'll need to identify some dates at your June 5th meeting. We're recommending the 8th, the 12th, and the 19th, but those are certainly just throwing those dates out there. And obviously, you all don't need to make a decision until June 5th, so we're just start looking at your calendars and see what your availability is, and we'd like to be able to adopt the budget by no later than Thursday, June 22nd. I want to say thank you and stop at this time and answer any questions that you may have. I know it's a lot to digest, but certainly be available for any questions as you may have them over the next few days and weeks to come as you start to go through it all. So thank you.
Thank you, County Manager Lucas. Good presentation. I believe everybody's had the opportunity to look over the consent agenda. Would like to seek a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I make a recommendation we approve consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Eifert.
Second.
Second by Commissioner McIntyre. Any other comments? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Time for public comments, and we do have one signed up for public comment, and that is Mr. Melvin Poole. He's here to talk with us about the schools. Mr. Poole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen and gentlewoman of the BOC, I hope I got that right this time, Commissioner Louder. I got chastised rightfully so last time. I hope when you look at the budget, and I didn't really know y'all were going to do this tonight, and I'm not trying to get in on be first in line, but I grew up in a family of 10, and if you want a biscuit, you better get at the table first. But I hope all of you will look at our BOE budget request as an investment in the future. And I know that's an overworked term, especially among politicians, because it usually indicates a spending program. But just in a minute, I'll get around to showing you that it can be an investment in our future. Obviously, money saved from the closing of Oakboro, I've not seen it. It got reallocated into other things right fast before we got there, but that's okay. We're going to move on. If we had had those, quote, savings, we wouldn't be asking you for more money. But let's look at some good news. We decided to open Oakboro back up rather than just going back and trying to open it as it was and irritating people once again, to do something different and try to get in on the cutting edge of what's going on in education. And we're doing a choice STEM school there. And it's sort of got, and I want to commend our staff, Mr. Josie and Mr. Poplin, and the rest of the staff's been involved in this, and the maintenance director. They've all been, working hard at getting this up and running. And it started off sort of slow, but as of this morning, we've had 262 applications for this school, and this is from all over the county. And here's the good news. And Chairman Lawhorn, I haven't forgot the question you asked about homeschoolers at the airport. That still weighs heavily on my mind, and I've got one of the committee chairs working, and Matt Swain's talked to them a little bit about this, and but we're still looking at ways to solicit some funds through the homeschool thing by making courses available to them. But in this school at Oakboro, we have 30 applicants that are from home schools, private schools, or whatever. Now, if we don't lose students elsewhere, that could in turn generate roughly 200,000 plus in funding from the state next year. And so what we're looking at is try to get some new things in place that's going to entice people to stay. And this school has created a lot of excitement, not just in the community, but from people elsewhere. I've had people tell me they're really excited about the fact that their child's going to get an opportunity to do this. And I had an opportunity to go to South Carolina to Anderson and visit a STEM school down there, and golly, I came away enthused too. This is some hands-on stuff, and I was observing third graders working on the design for a two-tier parking deck. They were using computers, and they were designing the thing and had a list of materials and stuff. It was just fascinating to see kids at that age that engaged in things. So I think it's going to be a very big plus for us. And this is not something we want to hoard for Oakboro. If this thing gets up and running well, I'd like to see it duplicated elsewhere in the county. And if it can keep drawing students into it, the point was made that there's a lot of other places to educate your children these days. So we're either going to get competitive or we will be out of business. And we're hoping this STEM school will make us a little bit more competitive, and I'd like to see it duplicated if we can get it up and get the kinks worked out of it. But thank you for your time, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. This time it's board comments, and I'm going to start out with Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have two events. The library, we have the History Museum's official ribbon cutting is going to be this Sunday, I believe it's the 21st. And then also at the airport, it's going to be a busy weekend. The Saturday and Sunday, the Wanna Go Fast drag racing event. So I hope we'll have plenty of folks come out from the county and surrounding. It should be a huge event. I know they've already sold out for race slots for car entry. So should be a great time this weekend at the airport.
Thank you. Commissioner Eford.
Mr. Chairman, I just don't have a report, but I would like to thank the library board for hosting us tonight. And if you hadn't had a chance to go to the museum or the history center, it's well worth your trip there. Thank you, sir.
Vice Chairman Burleson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I share the same thoughts as Commissioner Eford. We had a great time at the new History Center this evening with the library folks. Also, Commissioner Eford, Chairman Lawhon, and County Manager Andy Lucas, we attended the County Commissioners Assembly Day last week, Wednesday of last week in Raleigh. We gathered with all the other counties from around the state and heard some remarks from Governor Cooper on his thoughts for the budget and what he had presented to the General Assembly. And we also met with Representative Burr and Senator McGinnis and got their thoughts on kind of what's going on in Raleigh, and talked about a few issues that we have here in the county and some things they're working on. And I think as county manager, one item that we talked about that's concerning, as county manager mentioned a few minutes ago, was the property at the hospital that has kind of been pulled out of us being able to collect property taxes on it. It certainly has affected us and affected the city of Albemarle a great deal. And we certainly know that the hospital was charging a good rental rate on that property. So they're going to see what they can do to try to fix that, because we're not the only ones in that situation. Overall, we had a great day in Raleigh, and that's about it.
Commissioner Louder. Commissioner McIntyre.
No comment.
Commissioner Swain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one brief comment. I wanted to congratulate, I guess is the term, had the chance to attend the County 4-H Talent Night, I think is what they were calling it. The kids did some great things. And if you ever need blackmail on the cooperative extension staff, there's a video floating around of their rendition of the YMCA. But I wanted to congratulate the kids most of all. They did a great job, and I think 3 Stanley County 4-H participants will be headed to districts with their poster presentations and things like that. The talent night was the culmination of that whole day of activities that they were involved in. So, and then there's an RPO meeting Thursday night in Polkton, if anyone is interested.
Thank you, Commissioner Swain. County Manager Lucas, do you have anything else?
I've spoken enough tonight. Thank you.
Well, you've done a good job, too. I commend you. Thank you. Counselor Furr, do you have anything?
No, sir, thank you.
Ms. Tyler, how about you? Nothing? Okay, thank you. Thank y'all for what you do. I know County Manager Lucas, he knows I like to keep track of home building permits, and I don't have the last email he sent me about them, but I can tell you, year-to-date through the last reporting period he gave me, we are still ahead of last year, which was ahead of the previous year, so our economy is doing well with new home residential permits. No. Yes, sir.
I'll just make a note that we actually had more residential housing. We had 24 in April, which was higher than we had seen the year before, and actually higher in a 1 month time we've seen in a long time. We actually had more in a week in May than we had the whole entire month of April. So so obviously residential is clicking along fairly well.
Which drives a lot of different things. So thank you, County Manager Lucas. No other comments. At this time, we need to go into closed session to consult with the county attorney in accordance with GS 143-318.11A3.
Move, go into closed session.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.